From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones.
My interest in this was sort of peaked, I think it was around Billie Eilish. A standing ticket for her gig 3 years ago at the O2 cost on average about £76. And it was a great show. She's doing the same venue this year, so only 3 years on. And so I was thinking, it's interesting, let's see how much they are. The average price for a standing ticket this year at the O2 in London was about £245. I should also add that all of these figures are before fees. I can't do the maths, but
increase.
It's a big increase. That's what sort of started this whole thing off.
Duh.
I'm not saying she's the bad guy, but she does have the song Bad Guy, which is sort of her best known track, and it's brilliant. And she did the Bond theme, No Time to Die. She's an international artist who makes exciting music for, frankly, all generations, but she gets young people into music.
Our Jonathan Dean set off investigating ticket price inflation and found it's pretty widespread.
It's not just the arenas. You have theatres, which would include sort of academies and places like that. They've gone up, somebody told me, around 40% ticketing price, which is a lot. Guns N' Roses played Wembley Stadium at the end of June. To stand at that gig...
You don't even get a chair?
You don't get a chair. Bearing in mind that they haven't released a new album in many years, if you're a fan, you're going to hear Sweet Child of Mine for the 15th time.
Yeah.
Which is a great song. But there was a front section of that gig in the standing area at Wembley on sale for £935.
Pounds sterling.
Yeah, plus fees. What they get with that is you get a gift, you get a free bar, which is great. My favourite, you get a photo op with instruments, but there's a little asterisk by it and it says there's no artist participation. Okay. So you can't be near Slash. Slash probably isn't even in the stadium by the time you're doing this. And then the best one as well for this £935, you get to ask basically a member of the technical crew one question.
This kind of exclusive access, dynamic pricing, VIP packages, priority entry, there seem to be more methods than ever to extract money from music fans. So why has your summer of music become so expensive? Will it get worse? And is the company Live Nation to blame? The story today: the cost of gigging crisis.
I'm Jonathan Dean. I'm an executive editor for interviews for the Sunday Times culture section.
Jonathan, you'll go to shows all the time because of your job at the paper, but way back when you weren't doing this for work, can you remember how much you were paying for gigs? Was it sort of 2 shillings and threepence? What kind of era are we talking about?
In the 1800s. So I started going to gigs probably in the late 90s.
Yeah.
I think. I remember very vividly going to see Radiohead when they had just done OK Computer, which was 1997, a place called Reading Rivermead, which is essentially like a leisure centre. But that, from memory, was certainly less than £25.
Yeah.
But then even that feels like it maybe was too much. I remember going to loads and loads of gigs for big acts, and it was all around the £20 mark, or even like the £15 mark, that sort of thing. And it was just a completely different time. You used to phone up the venue and order tickets, and you'd queue up a bit on the phone, and then you'd get them, or you'd go in person to buy it. So yeah, I remember that, and I remember just the idea of spending hundreds was just not even in the language.
No. Well, now it very much is, and obviously you've said about seeing what's happened to just the price of, to take one artist, Billie Eilish, ticket prices, they've shot through the roof. Last year, a lot of people had a shock to the system when they were trying to buy Oasis tickets.
A lot of people very frustrated this weekend. They spent hours queuing to get tickets for Oasis.
Hours, and suddenly you're confronted with a price that is 3 times higher than you thought it was going to be.
Yes.
You'd go...
There was a big hoo-ha over the dynamic pricing. What is that?
There is a big hoo-ha about this. So when the Oasis tickets went on sale last year, there were standing tickets that I think were advertised at £135, and people ended up, when they were checking out, they'd gone up to £355 for the same ticket. And they were named these platinum tickets, which cost about 2.5 times the standard, but it's basically the same ticket. There's no extra benefit for it. Basically, it just meant that you kind of jumped the queue a bit quicker, and you were able to essentially secure your ticket knowing that you got it by paying more. than other people. And I think the problem with that was, it's the same ticket. It just costs more money. And I think it's important to say that dynamic pricing wasn't new for Oasis. It had been used by other people before, but it only really works to the extreme it did when you had the demand that happened for Oasis on that day. So other acts like Coldplay, I think, and Harry Styles actually had used it. And obviously they're very popular, but it was nowhere near that sort of news of Oasis coming back. So that it was the demand that pushed it up to the heights it did.
Broadly, why has it got so expensive? Can we blame the internet?
The internet, I think, basically you can go back. I mean, you can blame the internet for sort of everything, but I think with the internet for this, there's one really key thing. Like, none of this would work if ticket companies and promoters, which we'll get into all the sort of nitty gritty about what those different things mean. None of this would work if they didn't know what demand there was.
Yes.
And the only way that they can learn demand is by seeing how many people are logging onto a site at one point to try and get a ticket. You know, when you used to go up and queue in front of a venue to ask for a ticket, yes, there might have been 400 people there. You know, and a phone call, I might be wrong. I don't think you could tell how many people were phoning a venue at one point. There was just a queue, and sometimes you got through, sometimes it was just engaged. As soon as people could find out how many people were queuing up in a virtual queue in order to buy a ticket, then they know what the demand is, and therefore we know that they would be able to sort of put the prices up. When you come up to the Oasis thing, you know, it was the Saturday morning, everyone was trying to get tickets, and the goodwill of that story about Oasis coming back was really big. And I think a lot of people do. They kind of blew it. They blew the goodwill. I think people just started to feel, this isn't really that fun anymore. This isn't really kind of the inclusivity of a gig. It's not, it's meant to be sort of a wholesome, like, arts thing to go to. And I think people just essentially felt ripped off.
So we can blame the sort of platforms, I guess, for one part of this and the internet. But then also we've got this importation of American ticketing culture. Is that right?
It is. I spoke to a manager of a A-list act who wouldn't go on the record, but he basically says in America, A-list acts who play there, they can make, it was something extreme, like 8 million in 2 weeks or something like that. They come over here and to Europe, playing the same size sort of venues, they're barely breaking even. They're just not making money off these shows, which is, I think, really interesting because say you go to a sports event in the States, which is like what a lot of Brits do when they go to New York, they want to go to a basketball game. And you go onto like the New York Knicks site, for example, and you see the seats by the court are sort of $3,000, $5,000 and you skip them. But then you go, oh, fine, I'll just go into the gods. I don't really mind. But they're sort of 300-ish plus fees. That has also come over to gigs. So gigs are, well, I guess courtside is the £935 Guns N' Roses ticket because you are stage side, right? So basically the US model has pushed the price of our tickets up quite significantly.
And of course we always have, and it's been going on for a long time, but maybe it's got worse again because of the internet, secondary ticketing, tickets being sold on, people buying tickets and then selling them on for an inflated price. Once it was sort of touts in those sort of weird jackets that they have lingering outside venues, but now there are websites that do it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Here, there's legislation that is possibly coming in to sort of cap the resale market.
The price of resale tickets for live events in the UK could be capped under government plans to clamp down on ticket touts.
It's launching a public consultation on how much the cap should be. Ministers are also appealing for evidence on dynamic pricing.
There's one argument that Ticketmaster and Live Nation make about dynamic pricing, that it works because it's pricing the touts out. And therefore it's going to fans and more money is going to artists rather than...
Because the touts just won't have the cash flow to buy lots of £400 tickets.
There are certain people that don't think that argument makes any sense. Yeah. And all it means is that the tickets go on secondary sites at an inflated price. But in the States, that capping or any sort of like hint that that's going to stop just doesn't exist. Those secondary sites in America over the last, say, 5 or even 10 years have become so commonplace that this has also led to the increase in price. I spoke to Adam Webb from the pressure group Fanfare Alliance, who says the problem with secondary sites is that people see the costs of them and think that they are just the official tickets.
Where, it comes up on quite a recurrent basis that, we are pricing tickets too cheap and the secondary market is showing you that. It's showing you that people are prepared to spend more money on, prime seats and that, we need to capture that value.
Has basically sort of also inflated the prices because if you are a promoter and you know that people are willing to spend this money on it through that, then why wouldn't they charge that at the primary cost as well?
And again, what we're talking about with dynamic pricing is you're not trying to stop ticket touting, you're just trying to capture the value of ticket touting.
And also, as you've hinted at, with the opportunity to spend a lot of money to have a photograph with Slash's guitar after you've enjoyed Guns N' Roses from the front row in Wembley, there are all these add-ons once you're in the venue.
Exactly. And this is the thing that you look at all the time. I mean, it's sort of everywhere. So Hyde Park, which hosts the BST Live summer gigs, and they have huge names like Neil Young, Stevie Wonder, everyone's played there basically. That's almost the perfect example of what's going to happen in this country everywhere, because the way that place is split up between various complicated levels of VIP and cost and entry and various things that you can get is exactly what the American model wants. So Sabrina Carpenter's playing there this summer. There are 7 different types of VIP package. The cheapest ticket is like £80, but that puts you way back in sort of, like so far back.
So it's not even like that they can get there super early, even camp out and think, well, I've got my 80 quid general admission ticket, but I'm going to get there so early that I will get to the front. It's like they're not physically able.
No, you can't. And they just hit a barrier. This one at Hyde Park, it is quite far back.
It's like halfway through, isn't it?
Yeah, and so basically, I went to see Lana Del Rey there a few years ago, and sort of these fans who probably had camped out for ages just squashed up against this front barrier. And you just feel this isn't really what it's meant to be. And I think also the thing as well, when you see the VIP bit, it's really not crowded. So maybe they haven't sold the tickets, or more to the point, they just leave a lot of space, but they pen in. It's become a sort of long haul flight. You've got, I think people are always relatively surprised when you walk through a plane and you see how spacious business is, and then premium, and then you've got like economy can be quite cramped. It's basically that. With like sort of the sort of diehard Sabrina fans penned in at the back. I spoke to Reg Walker, who is a ticketing expert, about all of this.
And this effectively takes us back to the days of the Roman Colosseum, where the rich and the affluent basked in the glory of the emperor, and the slaves and the plebs are up in the nosebleeds if they got in at all. That's where we're heading now.
What do you think that does to the gig experience if you've got people segmented by ticket price going further away, especially in that kind of gig in a field environment? I mean, does it kill the vibe a bit?
I think it does. The music industry is clearly, by the title, it's a business. Like, no one's going to say that this is this sort of this wonderful egalitarian industry. It's not. It's always been about making like an awful lot of money. But I think when you go to these big gigs, at stadiums, at festivals, obviously, there is a sense that gigs should be communal. It's like, you're in there together because you're all singing the same songs. Like nobody's fandom should be priced out as better than someone else's. And I think it's become quite uncomfortable. I think you see people who are there who are just sort of like, this isn't that fun, how split up, how segregated everyone is based on their income. I don't really think it's the point of live music. But I think there's one really interesting point on this, actually. There's been a real move for, I'm just going to use Nick Cave as an example. I don't know whether this was ever on the cards or not. Hammersmith Apollo holds about, I think, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
But if he did 2 Hammersmith Apollos, he could have got 10,000 people sold out, whatever. He actually did the O2 Arena. He did 2 nights there. But what he did, what loads of artists do, they block out the top of the arena. So the top tier of arenas has sort of a big black curtain over them.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is you're selling out the like lower bowl, I think they call it. And I believe in the O2 that's like 12,000 or something.
Yeah.
Because there's an idea, which I think is true, that sort of society believes thinks that paying more for an arena show makes more sense than paying more for a theatre show. And also at the O2, you can also put markers down to sort of separate priority things and that kind of thing. And significantly, you've also got boxes, which you can sell out to companies. You're just going to make so much more money, even if half the venue's closed, than doing 2 of them. And I think, to be honest, I love Nick Cave. I'll see him live whenever he plays. I thought the O2 gigs were a bit weird because it was closed off at the top. And in these big spaces, you lose atmosphere in gaps. So where there weren't people sitting, the sound was sort of drifting off. I would much prefer that he did 4 nights at Hammersmith Apollo rather than 2 nights at the O2. But he would have made so much more money by doing the 2 nights at the O2.
Jonathan, we're talking about pricey tickets. Maybe you listening have a enormously priced ticket waiting in your wallet for something this summer. And lots of people are looking forward to Oasis and things like that. One company that comes up quite a lot as having quite a big slice of this pie is Live Nation. We've mentioned them already. Who are they?
Live Nation are a concert promoter, which essentially means that they're the ones who will negotiate. They will go to a band and a band's manager and a band's live manager, a lot of managers, and they will suggest a sort of like routing for a tour, and they will offer a certain amount of money kind of upfront, and then the promoter then has to sort of sell the tickets in order to make up the money that they've then given the band.
Yeah.
So that's what Live Nation is. They're just a promoter. So that's how they started. They started in Los Angeles as Live Nation, and they sort of formed in 1996, and the idea was just to organise gigs. They then started to sort of acquire other parts of the business to do with live music. So in 2010, it merged with Ticketmaster, which is the site, obviously, that we go on to buy the tickets mostly. They also own stakes in 28 UK venues and festivals, Reading and Leeds, Rewind, the Isle of Wight Festival, O2 Academies. Across the country, they also have fingers in the pies of like merch stands and security and even some artist management. So what they've done is they've sort of spread their tentacles to not just be a promoter, but to own so many facets of the live music industry.
And to kind of streamline, I guess, the route from the punter's wallet to them.
Live Nation, this is fairly obvious, but if they own a stake in a venue, they can probably pay a lower hire fee to a venue that they own than another promoter that doesn't own a venue. Or they know that they might be able to sort of make money from food and drink. So there are other revenue streams that they can get into that aren't just from selling tickets. Because it is, they argue, it's a risky business.
Yeah.
Because they put all the money up front and you don't quite know what's going to happen when tickets go on sale, especially when you factor in cost of living, people lost money in the pandemic. Like, things have happened that have really been bad for live music. It's not a new thing that people are sort of concerned about their spread, from owning all these different things. In the US, the Department of Justice believe that there's a possibility that owning Ticketmaster has created a monopoly. So there's an ongoing anti-monopoly lawsuit, and if successful, then they might have to sell Ticketmaster. That's ongoing.
The Justice Department filed this lawsuit on behalf of fans who should be able to go to concerts without a monopoly standing in their way. We have filed this lawsuit on behalf of artists. It is time to break up Live Nation Ticketmaster. The American people are ready for it.
And yeah, the company's just huge. Since the pandemic, the share price has doubled. It's now valued at around £24.6 billion. In 2022, the CEO, Michael Rapino, he had a total compensation, as in which includes salary, stocks, and bonus, and that went to $139 million, which that year made him the fifth highest paid CEO in the US. So they're obviously making lots of money, and I think, the sort of, for the casual fan, it's like, are we just paying for all of this?
What would the Live Nation say about all of this?
One of the arguments is the thing that we said about sort of how higher prices will price out touts. And then another argument they have, which is Rapino, the CEO, calls it a Robin Hood strategy, where he's saying that if we're charging these very high price tickets, then that's allowing cheaper tickets for people who can't afford the higher price tickets.
So if there's someone splashing $2,000 on a ticket, it means we can put on more 50 quid tickets.
That's the Robin Hood strategy, exactly. I think also one thing that's like fairly key, people are paying this amount of money. So you sort of go, any business, any artist, they're a bit like, well, why would we not charge this? It's sort of like when so many people in this country do complain about football, which is priced significantly lower than any of these gigs. I'm a Spurs fan, and loads of people complain about sort of £80, £90 on a ticket. The stadium's sold out every single time. So they
could double it.
Exactly. So it's the same with gigs. I'm not saying I have great sympathy for Live Nation, but it's a bit like, why would they lower it? Because people are paying these amounts of money.
Which sounds like then it's all here to stay. There's nothing here that's going to disrupt this, because if you've got consumers willing to pay this much, promoters and people who own these venues obviously want to make as much as they can from this enterprise. It's just going to continue going up and up and up, I guess, until maybe we get bored of paying too much for tickets.
Yeah, the only thing will be if consumers start to vote with their feet and decide not to go. Shakira in the States had lots of empty seats, and I believe also had to possibly even downgrade from a stadium to an arena at some points because it just really wasn't selling out at all. The same for John Legend. This is a fairly common theme. Beyoncé's recent run at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was the highest grossing that she's done. But by my rough maths, she's essentially filled around 76% of the stadium over those 6 nights, which isn't anywhere near full, frankly.
Is there any whiff of artists getting tired of this? Because we mentioned earlier about how, it might affect the vibe of a gig if you've got these cordoned off priority areas or people, real fans maybe being priced out. I know, isn't it Billy Joel who doesn't sell the front row of his concerts so then he can pick out proper quote-unquote fans from the cheaper seats to actually put there, because otherwise you're going to be playing to a load of sort of bored corporate types. So are the artists pushing back on this at all?
This is the thing when people talk about, sort of Live Nation as this Bond villain, sort of overarching everything. The artists and artist management have the final sign-off on all tickets.
I was just pissed off.
The really good example is Robert Smith from The Cure. He was very adamant about the idea that, yes, all the sign-off comes from the artist and the artist management.
Major artists, and they all know what's going on. And anyone that says they don't, they're lying. Or they're either fucking stupid or they're lying. It's just driven by greed, but it's the system. It's like you're up against something where everything's monetized. That's like.
He also said that I think The Cure were touring the States, I don't know, 3 years ago or something, and Ticketmaster wanted to charge something like $80 a ticket, which actually in our conversation now sounds incredibly cheap. But he was like, I want it to be $25.
I had spent an awful lot of time ensuring that we were selling like $25 tickets because I wanted younger people to be able to afford to come and see us. And then they were loading those tickets. They were charging more in fees and more in and all this other stuff. So we didn't allow dynamic pricing because it is a scam, And every artist could just say, I don't want that, and it would disappear.
So what's quite interesting is that Live Nation and Ticketmaster are kind of these sort of useful villains that artists don't even have to say anything. I think punters just blame them. Because that's the interface. If you're buying a ticket to Blur, you're not buying the ticket from Damon Albarn. You're buying it from Ticketmaster. So if the prices are extortionate, you will blame Ticketmaster. We revere artists. We don't really want them to be the bad guys because we think that they're these mostly sort of left-wing, mega-sharing, lovely people who want the best for everyone in the world. We never want to think of them as being greedy because we don't want to think badly about people who we're fans of. And even if it's not the actual artist sitting down and going through the nitty-gritty, then it is the artist and their management, it's their team. And even if the ticket prices were suggested by Live Nation or whichever promoter they're using, they have to have the sign-off. So artists and artist management, they do decide, essentially. I think Taylor Swift was a really good example. She looked after the tickets carefully for the Eras tour. You can do it, whatever size you are. It's very, very within Guns N' Roses' control to be, no, I'm not going to charge £900 to have a photo with a roadie. I might charge £900 to have a photo with Axl. Maybe. If people want to pay that, go ahead. I think it feels, we're on a bit of a breaking point where I think it's going to start to feel galling for fans to pay this much.
Why do we get so angry about all of this, though? I don't demand that there's a cheaper access point at some luxury restaurant in Mayfair for me. It probably should cost hundreds of pounds to watch Beyoncé sing live in front of you, shouldn't it?
I think this is where I get a bit music fan about it, because that makes a lot of sense. But the arts should be, I think, more accessible than fine dining.
Yeah.
I think, it's an enriching experience that it's a communal experience, which is really important. I think communal experience, I think we learned that so much during COVID. When people started to go back to gigs, it was incredibly emotional because you don't realise what you've lost until it's gone away. And when people start, I think there's a Reading Festival, the Arctic Monkeys were playing, and they did 505 off their second album or something like that.
I'm going back to 505. If it's a 7-hour flight or a 45-minute drive.
I didn't go, but I was watching it on TV. There were 3 or 4 people just bawling their eyes out. When I went back to gigs after COVID and you're in a crowd with people, you feel the importance of other people and connection, and you feel the importance of music. And that can go to theatre, that can go to everything. The arts, I think, are important for our well-being, and just in like society as a general, to sort of go to a place to share something with thousands of people is an incredibly important hobby. And if you're starting to sort of price people out of that, or put them really far back, when the kind of like EasyJet speedy boarders have like gone like sort of closer to the front, I think it ruins that. It loses that communal sense, which I think is the whole point of music. Music has always been this thing which you'd put on and you can just like share it with everyone. It's meant to be shared. And this isn't really sharing, it's dividing.
Jonathan Dean, executive editor for interviews at Sunday Times Culture. You can read plenty more of his work at thetimes.com, including a cracking exclusive interview with Johnny Depp. That is it from us. The producer and sound designer today was Hannah Varrall. The executive producer was Fiona Leach, and theme composition was by Mauro Seto. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.